Evening, everyone. Welcome to Fight Club. I'm your host, Robert Durden. Tonight we're going to be talking about Rush Limbaugh dying at age 70 today. We're going to be talking about Biden reneging on Yemen and his town hall and his statement about how he's not going to follow up on his promises to forgive student loan debt. We're going to talk about the time frame that we have to get stimulus to the people before the midterms are lost for the Democrats, and I think that moment is approaching quite fast. We're going to talk about the United States passing 500,000 deaths due to COVID yesterday, and what we can do to pressure the Biden administration to do more. We're going to talk about the things that I believe we can get out of the Biden administration via outside pressure, and some things where I don't think there will be any change at all, and I think it's futile. And lastly, we're going to be talking about voter shaming, in that it's a nuanced thing for me. My take is I'm not an absolutist on voter shaming at all. I have specific people who I have no qualms with voter shaming whatsoever, and I have some people who I think it should be off limits to shame their votes. And it's also one of those things, like I say, it's never entirely black and white. But there are certain people who get kind of culty, who I do believe they need to be shamed a little bit for past bad votes. You know, and it doesn't mean you're a bad person, but we need to talk about voter shaming and how that's nuanced. So the rules: Rule 1, talk about Fight Club. Rule 2, pick your battles, know your shit. Rule 3, know your opponent. Rule 4, keep the debate on topic. Rule 5, admit when you're wrong. And that last one is a huge one, as usual, guys. So let's talk about Rush Limbaugh real quick here. Not going to dedicate too much to it. He died today. He had stage 4 lung cancer. That's essentially what killed him. You know, you're not going to survive past that. That's terminal lung cancer, by the way. So he died this morning, and a lot of people have been, of course, making fun of it. I don't believe that that's right to do. He was an absolutely horrible person, and I'm going to talk just briefly about how he rose to power due to the Fairness Doctrine being dropped in 1987. So Rush Limbaugh is super right-wing talk show host. He's been popular for over 3 decades, and he is one of those ultra-right people who's into conspiracy theories. He, to this day, or if he were alive, to this day, he would still be saying that Trump was cheated of the election. He's as close to a QAnon conspiracy theorist, crazy right-winger as you can get. Now, Rush has been doing that for half of his life. I mean, really since, like, I think the 70s. And he had a meteoric rise to prominence when the Fairness Doctrine got dropped by, I believe, the Reagan administration back in the mid-80s. And the Fairness Doctrine was basically a piece of legislation that made you cover things as objectively as possible, and it more or less outlawed shows that would only spout conspiracy theories. You had to have sources to back things up. So of course Rush did very well in the late 80s and up until recently, because the Fairness Doctrine was dropped by the Reagan administration. And so it's not, you know, am I going to cheerlead his death? No, I'm not going to do that. But am I going to pretend like the world isn't a little bit of a better place without Rush Limbaugh alive? No, I'm not going to pretend that either. I'm an objectivist. And I do feel bad for his family. My condolences. I want to, as an atheist, send his family what I think they would send me if I lost a family member. So you have my thoughts and prayers. Okay. So I'm done with Rush Limbaugh. He's dead. He's maggot food. I feel bad for his family, but he was a terrible person. Biden, another terrible person. So I recently had a Shithead of the Week episode where I was putting Neera Tanden up against Joe Biden for the Shithead of the Week. That was last week. I gave Neera Tanden the shithead of the week because Joe Biden actually did something good with Yemen. He agreed that we weren't going to support the Saudi genocide in Yemen anymore. And I gave him mad props, and I shouldn't have. Because as it turns out, as with every other executive order that Joe Biden has put out, you have to read the fine print, and as it turns out, we are pulling out of what we consider to be any offensive moves and stratagems in Yemen. So we're still going to, quote-unquote, help the Saudis defend themselves, which that's, again, they can decide whatever they want for what constitutes defending themselves and then still keep doing basically the same thing. And of course it's all bogus because of course Yemen isn't attacking the Saudis. It's a genocide. It's not a war. It's not like, you know, you're deciding not to attack one side in an even-sided battle. Like they have an embargo on medicine and food into Yemen right now. So you need to go further. And of course Joe Biden did not actually live up to what the executive orders seem to be stating in the original headlines. So I'm going to take credit away from you, you enormous pile of fecal matter, Joe Biden. And I am going to give you a tie with Neera Tanden for shithead of the week last week, because you've gone back on that. The other thing he did yesterday, which is, again, it's like they're trying to lose the midterms. During his town hall, he was asked by a woman if he would consider forgiving up to $50,000 of student loan debt. Now, he was not pro forgiving $50,000 of student loan debt very much, if at all, on the campaign trail. He may have been pushed there once by Bernie and Elizabeth Warren to admit maybe he would consider it. He was more like, let's do some sort of like $10,000. But it would be so easy to just forgive it all. So I don't know, and he can do that via executive order. Don't let anybody tell you different. He can forgive all student loan debt via executive order, all federal student loan debt anyways. And he could, as a matter of fact, also outlaw those vultures that get you on private student loans that have like 5% interest. He could also outlaw that stuff because it basically is like, they're like loan sharks basically. So he could outlaw that as well, and that would get all of student loan debt. But he's not going to do that. And of course, he's backtracking on everything. Every campaign promise he had at some point and every executive order he's put through has been bogus. He walks it back every single time. It's an anemic presidency so far, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. So that brings me to my next point. I mentioned on one of the first shows that I think that the Democrats, if they don't get something out to the people by the end of February, that the midterms are lost. So I'm sticking with that. I think that early March is about as late as you'll get. And if you don't get stimulus checks out to people March 1st or in the first week of March, I think we're done. And what people on the center will tell you is like, well, we did the, Biden did the eviction moratorium extension down to June 1st now. Yeah, but now we're a year into the pandemic. It started last March. Like, if you keep doing the eviction moratorium, fine. But what's going to happen when the eviction moratorium ends and people owe 9, 10, 11, 12 months back rent? It's only putting a Band-Aid over an enormous gaping, bleeding wound. And to simply keep doing the eviction moratorium without helping people get actually back on their feet and putting them into tons of back rent and mortgage debt, you're not helping their well-being. You're putting them in a perpetual state of fear that they're going to not get the next eviction moratorium, and that they're not going to get the next stimulus check, and they're going to end up out on the street. Just give everybody the fucking stimulus check. Do the eviction moratorium if you have to, and I would do that too. But stop fucking around like the eviction moratorium is the be-all, end-all, and get the goddamn stimulus checks out. It's not that hard. So it's so frustrating. They have the eviction moratorium to the beginning of June, I believe, is, you know, it's a decent step. But again, these people aren't, they know that they're not going to get kicked out of their house necessarily right now because of the moratorium, but that doesn't mean that they're comfortable. It doesn't mean that they aren't losing their livelihood and don't live in a perpetual state of fear. Joe Biden is absolutely pathetic on this. This should have been done weeks ago. So I think if they don't have $1,400 stimulus checks out minimum by March 4th or 5th, March 7th at the latest, first week of March, you're done. You're losing the 2022 midterms. I'm pounding the gavel. Done. People will not forget this. So, COVID, as of yesterday, we have 500,000 dead Americans as of yesterday due to COVID. So, what I'd like to do in honor of us being so great at COVID deaths, we're like winning so hard on COVID deaths, is talk about what we can possibly do to push the Biden administration towards expanding healthcare or Medicare for all. And even though I think that's a low percentage chance of us getting that done, I'd like to pick out a few other things that we might be able to get done during the pandemic or during the Biden presidency after we've gotten COVID under control that might actually come to fruition. So the only way that we're going to actually be able to get these things is if we have outside pressure on Biden. He has to be reprimanded at every turn. He has to be made fun of. He has to be all of his walking back of certain promises and walking back of certain headlines to the bare minimum of legislation has to be pointed out at every turn. You can't let them have any victories because they have gotten none. They haven't earned any victories yet. It's so frustrating that we have to call them out on how bad they're being because they want to, stay out of Yemen but still defend the Saudis, but they want the credit for completely backing out of the genocide in Yemen, which they're not doing. And they're trying to get as much credit for doing as little as possible and just using the media to spin it in their direction. And it's so frustrating because nothing fundamentally has changed. I mean, we're just barely ahead of where Trump was when he left office. So in terms of materially helping people's well-being, that is. So, I mean, I want to give him a little bit of credit, but generally, man, not a single one of those executive orders is really all that good. So I think we can push him on 3 things, and I wrote this yesterday, and now I think it's probably 2 things. I was going to say we could probably push him on student loans, we can probably push him on minimum wage, and we can probably push him on climate change. That's about it. And the first 2, I think we can get something done under the guise of, well, COVID ravaged the economy. We are in a bubble. It's going to pop while he's in office. The economy is going to be, I mean, it's already in the tank. It's going to go worse once the bubble bursts. So when it comes down to him either getting reelected or Kamala Harris running in 2024, or if it bursts before 2022, the main thing for the Democrats is going to be like, let's make sure the economy is stable. And what have we done to make sure the economy is stable? You're never going to pass another tax bill that gives enough that's going to give all those tax breaks to the rich, and you're never going to be able to re-inject all of that money from the Fed back into the stock market again without seeing some sort of issue in terms of inflation. But you might be able to, and I think an argument can be made to Joe Biden himself, that you can reinvigorate the economy by simply unleashing the millennials by forgiving all student loan debt. And it's not one of those industries that has a tremendous amount of lobbying like the healthcare industry or the oil industry. Of course, they do have some, but it's one of those ones where I think if you just put it in the context of this will stimulate the economy and make sure that you have a strong economy when you leave office and when Democrats need to run for re-election, you can probably convince him to forgive at least some student loan debt. Now, again, last night in his town hall, he was completely overtly against $50,000 of student loan debt forgiveness, which I owe like $280,000 for my doctorate, so that does mean nothing, but I don't even care about myself. There are a lot of people out there that have bachelor's degrees that are absolutely worthless. They're my age. They're getting destroyed by the economy. Getting their bachelor degree price tag forgiven would mean the world to them, and that's not even that much, but he's not going to do that. So we'll just push him. We'll see what we can finagle. Maybe we'll get some student loan debt forgiven. I think we can push him on minimum wage for the same thing. You can convince him that the middle class can be rebuilt and that he'll have an FDR-like legacy, quote unquote, if he passes a higher minimum wage. And you can make the argument that once people have some money in their pockets, they'll just simply spend more, which will help us dig ourselves out of the depression that we're in because of COVID. So I think you could frame it that way to Joe and maybe get a minimum wage. And again, I don't think we're going to get $15, certainly not right away. Maybe we'll get lucky and get 13 or 14. I don't think that's enough to save the Democrats in 2024 or 2022, but you know, maybe we'll get lucky and we can push them that way and frame it thusly to get it. Lastly, climate change. I do believe that he can be pushed on this. Again, he does have a lot of lobbying from the oil industry, but this is one of those existential threats where now things like hurricanes a couple of months ago in the summer, or now enormous blizzards in the south, and them not being prepared as far as their infrastructure, but also the fact that we can see extreme weather events getting worse and worse by the year. Like, we can see our own evidence that climate change is happening now with our own eyes. I think that Biden, corrupt as he might be, cannot possibly ignore it any further. So I think that he can probably be pushed to do some sort of like quarter measure on the Green New Deal. And that might be reducing, I think he said CO2 emissions down to 0 by 2050. That's not near enough. Maybe we can push them to 2030. Maybe we can push him to be 100% electric vehicles by 2030. Other stuff like that is a good start. I don't think he will budge on anything else. But those three things I think we can leverage and reframe in a way that will be beneficial and we can get some good things done. The good news is, if he does not do anything like he has done for the first month, if he continues to do this, here's the silver lining, lefties, and I'm going to lay it out for you as honest as I know how. The shittier that it gets under the neolibs over the next 4 years, that is better for somebody like Nina Turner running for president in 2024. The less of a good job they do, the more of a door it opens for a lefty to come in and just destroy Kamala Harris in the primary next year. But again, if they do a decent job and help people materially, Nina will not win. Nobody can win on the left if that's the job they do. If they get a $15 minimum wage and 1 or 2 stimulus payments, forget it. The lefties will not have a chance. That's just me being objective. But that's why I'm saying this is the silver lining. There is a possibility that somebody can make a run in 2024 and usurp either Biden, won't be Biden, his brain will be melting out his ears by then. More likely, Kamala Harris. You run Nina against her, you got a good chance. And have Nina run ultra-populist, be ultra-aggressive in the debates, and having the Biden presidency, as horrible as it was, in the rearview mirror, people are going to vote for the lefty that's coming in to knock on the door and knock things down, bull in a china shop style. So I think that that's a good thing. So I'm choosing to remain optimistic that we can push Biden, but if it turns out like a year from now we haven't gotten anything done, I'm going to start focusing on, okay, well, let's just let them implode and then destroy them in 2024. Could probably do it in 2022. I don't know. We'll see. I think 2024 is the opportune moment for us to strike if they just don't get anything done, though. Last thing I'd like to talk about is voter shaming, and I'm going to go into a little bit of nuance on what I believe here. One of my biggest influencers when I got into politics was Kyle Kalinske, and this is something that he and I would disagree on. He believes that it's bad to voter shame on principle. Usually I'm pretty principled, but I'm also an objectivist and an empiricist, meaning I look at reality and try to judge it as accurately as it is without trying to put on rose-colored glasses on anything. And the conclusion I've come to over the last year or so on voter shaming is I used to be against it, but now I am for it in very specific instances, and you will see on Twitter I absolutely go after Biden voters like crazy. Now, I gotten a little bit of a, I had some people call me out on Twitter earlier, when I tweeted something like, if you're a Biden voter and you're not ashamed of him so far, then you're just as culty, you're just as intellectually bankrupt as a Trumpist. And I got a lot of flack for that, especially from 2 people, where they're like, shaming Biden voters isn't going to help anything. And this is a flawed argument, and I get it a lot when I go after people that should be ashamed of their vote for Biden, considering how horrible he's doing right now. I want to clarify. If you are ashamed of your Biden vote, if you held your nose and voted for him knowing he was going to be awful, or even if you didn't know any better, you were a little bit ignorant at the time and you voted for him and now you're realizing he's awful, my beef is not with you. If you're ashamed of your vote, then we're on the same side. I'm going after people that think Biden is doing a good job right now. I'm going after the people who are not ashamed of their vote but should be right now. I'm going after the people that idolize and worship at the altar of Biden the same way that Trumpists idolize and worship at the altar of Trump, because they're no different other than the color tie that they wear to work. So when I talk about voter shaming, I will voter shame those people all day long because they're proud of a shitty vote. If you voted for Biden and know that that was a shitty vote, I'm with you. I'm not going to shame you at all. You knew it was bad. But I am absolutely going to cudgel you over the head if you think that your vote was good and you're still fighting for Biden after the first month and he's done nothing for anybody. If you're still proud of that vote, I will voter shame you. Absolutely. So again, it's nuanced, and I won't go after anybody on their vote on principle, but I do believe that if you don't get shamed and you're one of those kind of people, that you will never stop the way that you do things, the way that you think. It's like in school. If you the teacher calls on you and you give a really dumb answer and the classroom kind of snickers around you, and you know that you probably should have known the answer, or maybe you didn't study and you didn't answer it correctly and you got laughed at, I guarantee you go home and you educate yourself and make sure that doesn't happen to you again, or so you can reduce the amount of laughter that you get. It's a very highly motivational thing to be laughed at once or twice, and then you go and get educated and it doesn't happen again. Now, I wish that weren't the way Americans operated in their minds. I wish that they could hear information, absorb it, and then come to a conclusion based on actually taking that information under consideration. But they don't consider it. They just don't. So a lot of those people, these people that are still proud of their vote for Biden, they can't absorb new information. So the only way you're ever going to get through to them is to shame them. Now, if you don't shame them, I would just say don't bother with them. And that generally is how I do in my personal life. Now, on the show, I will absolutely go after people. On Twitter, I'll go after people all the time. And I will absolutely voter shame people that voted for Biden that are defending him when he's doing horrible things. And I'm going to continue to do so. But it's not so black and white as like, oh, well, if I'm making fun of people that love Biden, doesn't mean I hate all people, or making fun of all people that voted Biden. So that's a straw man. It's a bad argument. Of course, that's not what I mean. And I even say in these tweets, I'm like, if you're not ashamed of your vote for Biden by now, you should be. There's a stipulation right at the beginning of the sentence, and people choose to overlook that and go, well, I am ashamed of my vote for Biden, but I still think that I had to stop Trump. It's like, yeah, I get it. Like, you're ashamed of your vote for Biden. My beef isn't with you. I stipulated that in the tweet. So stop getting on my ass about it. I'm only going after people like Neera Tanden and people that are proud of their shitty votes. And of course, I will continue to do that. Even if it was my friend who voted for Biden, that friend, as long as they're friends with me, I'm going to rib them the rest of their lives about that shitty vote. Like, that's just the way that it's going to go. Like, you remember that one time you voted for Trump? Remember that one time you voted for Biden? You never get away from it. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to, like, call you a dum-dum for the rest of your life. But I will absolutely, like, call you out for some past ignorance, of course. Yeah. But it doesn't mean I'm going after you personally. And it doesn't mean that just because you voted for Biden, I will necessarily dislike you personally. So, and it's so funny, like, the other thing that frustrates me, and this is not everybody, so I don't want to overgeneralize, but a lot of them are like, oh, I voted for Biden, give me a big pat on the back, aren't I such a hero? I stopped fascism. I am so brave, I voted against fascism. And they want all this credit, they want to be heroes because they voted for Biden. But then it's like, people like me will come along and be like, but yeah, your boy Biden is like, like, he's doing nothing via executive order. Insulin prices are up. He's starting to be hawkish with Iran. It looks like he's trying to invade Syria to steal oil, so we're on the verge of maybe 2 new wars. Like, there are ways that Biden is objectively being worse than Trump was, and you don't want any responsibility. You're like those parents that, like, they want all the credit when their kid makes the honor roll, but they'll never want any. They don't want to take any responsibility if the kid shoots up the school or gets caught dealing drugs or beats up another kid at school, being a bully. Like they want all the credit when things are good and they want to take none of the responsibility when things are bad. Same thing with, like, you know, sports teams that will, like, or sports players that'll be like, well, I want to thank God for our victory today. But then when they lose and you interview them afterwards, they don't want to be like, well, fucking God let us down today. Goddamn Jesus just wasn't doing his job. He let us down on the field today. Like, they want to give all the credit to themselves or all the credit to their God, which is in this case Joe Biden, when something minorly good happens, but then they don't want to take any responsibility for all the shit that he's doing. So it's this hypocritical mindset that I have to call out that's so frustrating, because it's like, yeah, I'm consistent. I gave him credit for the Yemen stuff, even though I hate him, because I'm consistent. But you guys can never call him out on anything horrible that he does, but you will kiss his feet for the tiniest little thing that he does. You will let him pee on you and you'll call it rain. You will worship him and never blame him. So it's obvious that you're just exactly like the Trumpists are. Brings me full circle to my original point. How are you any better than the Trumpists if that's the way that you think about things? And you just spent 4 years voter shaming them over being dummies, when a lot of them voted for Trump simply because they wanted someone to go in there to wreck the status quo. It had nothing to do with partisan politics. But you'll spend all 4 years just saying they're dopey for their votes and they're responsible for their votes. But when you get called out and people say that you're responsible for your votes and you're responsible for the bad things Joe Biden does, no, you want nothing to do with that. I had nothing to do with that. I want credit. When he does something little that's good, I want to be patted on the back. But when he does something really, really big that's bad, I had nothing to do with that. I mean, I voted for him, but I was just voting against Trump is what I was doing. So, no, it's nonsense. You're hypocrites. You're just like Trump. And, of course, you'll come after me and strawman me like I'm going after all Biden voters indiscriminately, which is, of course, not exactly what's not happening. So, as I like to say, I will shame your vote. I'm not going to shame the voter. But if you're near Tandon, if you're one of those corporate Democrats that's just worshiping Biden, I'm coming after you. Indiscriminately, not indiscriminately, but I'm coming after you. I'm shaming you for your vote, for your lies about Biden, and for not calling him out adequately. So that's all I've got for you tonight. I'd like to do another episode with Ian soon, but again, we had another snowstorm, and I think he ended up in a ditch yesterday. So his car may or may not be functional. So I'd like to say that he'll be over here momentarily. Hey, what's up? This is my cat. Oh, say hi, Sammy. Short for Sam Squamch. Sam Squamch. You're very good. All right, get out of the way. So I'd like to think that Ian will be back over in the next couple of days, but I have to see if his car is actually operating. So at the next full-length show, we will be talking about running independent versus Green Party versus People's Party versus within the Democratic Party for 2024. We'll be talking a little bit about socialism versus capitalism in preparation for my debate with Ben coming up pretty soon. Ian and I won't go into that a lot, but I will. There's something, I posted a pretty interesting story about Finland earlier today, and about how if we had socialized, and this doesn't have to do with Finland, this is a separate story, in Texas right now with the blizzard that's wiped out a lot of their electrical grid, how that if they had a more socialized state government, that a lot of that wouldn't have happened. So I'd like to talk about that as well. And I can't remember what the other thing was. But anyway, thank you for being with me tonight. I will put up another show tomorrow, and I think I'll have Ian to you within the week. So have a good one, guys. See you later.